Hi friends, welcome back. So want to give you an update what's going on in the stock market today and what's going on around the world. So let's just jump right in. You can see Tesla stock is down, Nvidia stock is down. Those are your bubble stocks that are down. Chip stocks are down, other tech stocks are down also. Then you have your defensive and your oil stocks are up. I want to start with this story because I think it's an important one and it captures what's going on in the market, what's going on in the economy, and what people are doing in the USA. Now, first you have to understand that when we talk about the USA, 2/3 of the economy is basically people shopping, consumers. You need people to buy your clothes, go to restaurants, buy your new iPhones, etc., to keep the system going. This is a big one, though. I think like this kind of restaurant, this is Red Lobster, says they're closing more locations, bankruptcy proceedings. Like what? I didn't know they were going bankrupt, but evidently they are. And essentially, when you have a business, you have to offer a product that someone has money to pay for, right? Or they find it necessary. Also, too, you have to offer a product that is at a price level that people can afford, and also, too, that they find good value. Now, I don't think people are necessarily going to stop going out to eat altogether, but I do know that prices for U.S. restaurants are through the roof. I see it in the numbers, and last time I was in USA, I was like, oh my God, are people really paying $20, $30 for, just a typical meal? And it's like, dang. For those of you who've been to Red Lobster recently, you can let me know what current prices are, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on what the current value is. Evidently, though, I guess they're not offering enough value for people to come. You can see they're closing down 23 restaurants, and I guess they're going through bankruptcy stuff. They're bringing in a new CEO to try to turn it around, but who knows? It's if the money isn't there, it isn't there, right? And I saw this article too, which is I want to show you guys. It kind of reflects what's going on in the U.S. consumer, and it's something I bring up all the time. And this is actually about a flight attendant that works for Frontier. And I'll be fairly frank, I think a lot of people are in her situation. I felt sorry. I didn't realize it was this bad. But basically, when you first get hired at Frontier, it was saying that you have to do 3.5 weeks of unpaid training. I didn't realize that, unpaid. And then it said that she has to do Instacart, pet sitting, Lyft driving, and other sort of odd end jobs to sort of make ends meet. Moreover, you're only getting paid, that said projected pay for your first year is $23,000. It's not very good, and that's before taxes. And then they were also talking about, and I'm bringing this up because you have to understand that for the U.S. economy to work, remember 2/3 of it are consumers. You need people to be going to restaurants, buying phones, buying clothes, these kind of things. But people need enough money to do said things, right? And this is a chart here of what flight attendants get paid. So at Frontier, you're getting paid low 20s, JetBlue, mid 20s, Alaska, United, mid 20s, American's a little bit higher than that. And it's no surprise actually that Delta, which in my opinion is the best US carrier, they pay the most. It's like that you're around $32,000 to start. What's interesting as well is that with Delta is that you top out at a higher end, right? So top rate pay is $71. And then I think they have profit sharing and other things. So point being, better service, you pay your people better. Who doesn't know that? The issue though is that from a consumer's point of view is you're like, well, if I just need to get to point A to point B, I don't care what services, I just want the lowest price. And that's a business model, but if you guys know some of these Frontiers, your Spirit stuff, that the service is awful. And so then the question becomes, okay, how long can we maintain these kind of businesses by not paying our people? Well, I mean, and I'm sure you guys understand what I'm saying, because you're just like, well, from my opinion is either fly Delta or don't fly at all. That's my opinion. And I think it's kind of a similar situation with, say, a Red Lobster. Some businesses are going to make it, some are not. And then you have your workers who feel like they're not getting paid enough, and they're going to go on strike, right? You guys see how the cycle keeps going, and it's part of the culture of Wall Street, part of the culture of happening in the USA. When the money isn't flowing, companies got to figure out, okay, how can we keep showing Wall Street that we're turning a profit, and how can we keep those margins, right? So one way is not giving raises to your workers, but I mean, it bleeds down to your workers to where they can't afford food or rent. You guys understand the system. And so then we go into earnings for something like an Nvidia. And again, and this is all if you believe the market and essentially stock earnings are connected. So in one sense, and this is something that I talk about a lot in the channel, many stocks in our market are bubbles or meme stocks, meaning that they're not trading on their numbers. They're not trading on any intrinsic value. They're just trading on because people want to buy said stock. But ultimately, though, the bubble pops, right? People just don't have money to keep buying said stock, and it's not connected to reality anymore. And this is where you pay attention to earnings. Can something like NVIDIA prove to everyone that, hey, we're still selling a bunch of chips because all these companies like your Deltas and your Red Lobsters are going to invest in AI? But it's just like, is that really where we're going? And part of, I think, the selling point of this AI stuff is, hey, we're going to buy a bunch of chips to make humans more productive. So we'll have less humans in the office. Those humans will have to do more work. We're going to fire all the other humans to maintain our margins, or we're just going to replace humans altogether. That's why I talk about labor. That's why I talk with you guys about sort of the economy. And again, for this whole system to work, though, let's say we replace everyone with AI. Who's going to be shopping anymore? Do you guys see what I'm saying? So this is something that you just want to pay attention to stuff. I don't believe this AI stuff for sort of the reasons I've been telling you. And moreover, this is another reflection of what's going on in our economy right now. So take a look at this. Headline is Shadow Banking Drives a Rural Kentucky Lender to the Brink. The basic gist of the story is you have these, they're not like your like your mainstream chain banks, like your JP, Morgan, that kind of thing, Chase, right, that thing, or, like your, I guess, a Wells Fargo or Bank of America. They kind of operate in this other area. They still can offer you products like, say, mortgages or loans, stuff like that, but they may not necessarily offer you traditional checking. What happens is for these kind of banks, and why I'm bringing up this Kentucky thing, is they're in communities that, just no other way to put it, are dying. The article described as like this bank, I think they started in like 1909, like a long time ago. And, just slowly jobs move away. You have less consumers and they start taking more risky bets. And so these days, this bank, which, used to be like a bedstone or bedrock of the community, is now like betting on fintech and whatever. And now like they've over leveraged and they're using their customer deposits to take risky bets because there's nothing else there. And it was kind of crazy too, just to give you an idea, is that this particular bank, now it's run by, the person's name is William Buff and Clark, but people just call him Buff. And he's like a third generation banker, says, and like his mom ran the bank for 36 years and then she retired and he stepped in. I mention this kind of thing because like, it's not that these banks are inherently bad or anything. This is a family-owned business, right? And passed on to the generation to generation, et cetera. But the money just isn't there anymore, and industries are moving around, right? I'll just give you an example. So, like, say, I grew up in Oregon, and you can only log, right, cut down the trees, timber for so long. You don't want to overdo it. The same way if they need, one of the things, and for those of you who are from Kentucky, you can let me know which industries have been slowing down, but it's just... It's just how it is. Things change. Moreover, it's a similar situation in China, and because I want to guys give you a sense of like overall globally what's happening. They're having a slowdown also, right? So it's not just stuff in USA; it's also connected. If they're having a slowdown, right? Say if people in China aren't buying iPhones, then people say who work for Apple in USA aren't going to have so many jobs, right? Or if people in China aren't buying, say, for example, GM cars, for maybe because the Chinese cars there are now cheaper, or, maybe they're not having enough money to buy cars at all, then people who work in, say, the factories or the offices at GM aren't going to have jobs, right? We're all connected. And a lot of our world actually is based on debt. So you can even see here, China's economy is slowing. So they're like talking about raising their debt ceiling. I laugh because like you kind of know how that game's played. We basically do the same thing in USA. Consumers run on debt, the government runs on debt, everything runs on borrowing. The problem is though, is like, what if people stop paying stuff, what if people don't have any money to buy your debt? And that's essentially what's happening here with this Kentucky. Or what if you're trying to do these risky ventures that don't turn out well? The other thing too is going on is news in the Middle East. This is kind of a crazy story, and you want to pay attention to all this stuff. We talked about there's fighting between Israel and Hezbollah, right? So that has the world on edge. I think oil went up by $3 today a barrel. And then you have this where Libya is closing down their oil fields. And this was a crazy story. I actually had to dig through this one because there wasn't a lot of info. But when you actually dig through and figure out what's going on, it's worse than people are letting on. Let me read this other headline, and again, you have to find this one. Libya's central bank resumes operations after release of kidnapped official. So what? There was some sort of there's some sort of power vacuum going on right now in Libya, right? They're fighting over who controls the oil fields or whatever. So right now they're not in operation. And then in a related story, there was like a kidnapping related to this stuff. And this was the description of it. I'll read it to you. It says operations at Libya's central bank, like their central bank, in Tripoli have resumed after release of a senior official. So like, are you kidnapping the equivalent of Jay Powell over in Libya? That's how crazy this is. And this, read it. Whose abduction on Sunday had caused a brief suspension of operations. The bank said in a statement on Monday. What? CBL, so that's their central bank, confirmed the release of the head of its information technology department, Musab Muslam, who was taken on Sunday by a quote unknown party. It's like, what? And then when they talk about they're halting their production, it said here, the Tripoli-based CBL suspended services at home and abroad, quote, due to exceptional disturbance. Like, what? So I know it's not funny to talk about kidnappings or abductions, but that's how wild and nuts our world is. And you put this on top of like, okay, basically you're unstable in the Middle East, right? Your economy is unstable in China. You got Red Lobster closing around the world, or well, at least in USA. I actually don't know if Red Lobster is international. I've never seen them in Korea. I live here in Korea right now, if you don't know, but I've lived many countries. And if you're curious, though, we do have international chains here. Like we have Outback is here, McDonald's is here, On the Border is here. I was just thinking about ones I've seen recently. Do we have Burger? Yeah, we do have Burger King. I just don't go to these places, but I do know what they are. And moreover, you're also talking about a time when stocks are overvalued. When you take a look at like just numbers, and I want to show you sort of what I'm looking at here. This is a fascinating article because they actually laid out the numbers pretty well. I usually only show you one or two, but it's nice when they have this chart of like all the stuff together. If you want to look at the price of the market, be it price to earnings, or you look at the Shiller P ratio, or how much they compare to dividends, or the Buffett indicator, any number of these things. The way you read this chart is that 100 is the most bearish, right? And like all of these reads, when you look at the market, basically says we're at the top. And so the only way to not be at the top, well, there's a couple ways. So one way is companies make a bunch more money, right? NVIDIA comes out and says, you know what? We're making so much cash. The price of our stock makes sense, right? It totally makes sense. The other way is, for these numbers to be more reasonable is basically price of stocks come down, right? Essentially, is if you're overvalued, then they make it more reasonable because you want to have your price of stocks in some correlation, some relation to how much money you make. That's why we talk about earnings on this channel. That's why we talk about the economy. And it goes back to then, okay, are companies willing to invest in your AI chips? Are these AI chips really going to make said companies money, right? Are these companies going to choose giving raises to their people, right? So I mentioned the airline situation. And moreover, are these people who work at all of these companies, are they going to have enough money to keep buying products and keep the system going? And this is sort of why when you track all this news together, it makes sense, right? So for example, here's another one. IBM slashes China research team as it shifts work to other regions. Basically, IBM, I think 1,000 people are losing their jobs. I know these kind of things don't get headlines, in USA, but I do look at this stuff. I mean, this is an American company in in China. It says here, employees said more than 1,000 staff are losing their jobs. And then I guess there's a bunch of offices over there. So it's spread between several offices in mainland cities, working in 2 research-focused labs. They gave a couple reasons. One is just the profits are down. The other reason is U.S.-China relations aren't great. And, if you're curious, though, because I just want to give you, I don't want you to think that there's no money to be made anywhere or that everything completely shuts down. It's not like that. Just things slow, right? Instead of going to Red Lobster, every week, maybe people only go once a month and there's just not enough business. Or, if you're going to go out to eat, maybe you have 3 choices of restaurants. You're not going to go to all of them, and Red Lobster is not going to be the one example. So it's not like you don't do anything. It's not like you don't spend any money. It's just that you're not necessarily have a plethora of money to spend all the time. Here's another example of not everything necessarily shuts down. Defense contractors, they're doing fine. I talk about this stuff on the channel from time to time. I don't think this industry is ever going to die. It's just unfortunate truth of the world with conflict happening and you have border disputes, etc. There's always going to be a need for defense. You can see here the cash flow demo is going up. You can see this for yourself, free cash flow. And moreover, I was thinking about this one too. Let me find it here. Yeah, here it is. I think nuclear may end up being a thing. It may not necessarily, not nuclear power, may not necessarily be nuclear power, but maybe any kind of energy related stuff, because it's not like we're not going to need energy. Now, the argument against energy would be populations are declining and our energy consumption's not going to be what it is. I don't know. I don't know about that, because I think we live in a world increasingly, if we go into this world to where like we can't rely on, oil from the Middle East, it's just too unstable, or, we can't keep polluting forever, these kind of things. And I know nuclear is a whole issue, whether or not it's pollution or not. It's you have a lot of safety safety, I would say regulations, a lot of safety issues involved. And you do want to regulate this kind of stuff. But it was interesting because here in South Korea, we were trying to get a nuclear plant, but there was some sort of dispute on how the thing's being built, and I don't know the exact detail. I just don't know. I read through it, but I was like, I don't know what to believe for this kind of stuff. But I'll just say that there's money involved with these things, and everyone wants their piece of the pie. And there was an interesting article which is related to that. Is one way we can maybe get all this power going to our AI is again through nuclear. So it's not like everything's going to crash all the time. There's still going to be some businesses that do well. Or here's another example, and this sort of reflects the kind of state of the world that we're in, right? So maybe defense contractors do well, maybe nuclear power does well, maybe obesity drugs do well. This is something that I've noticed is going to running theme, it's a sad theme, but it's just the reality of our markets. Or there are still going to be people out there saying the financial markets, is Ken Griffith over Citadel. He's still building his Miami headquarters. Just curious how he's doing. So obviously there's going to be still some people who are doing okay. But I will point this out. The sort of pressure on governments to protect their local markets, because people are like, oh, why are you letting all these imports in, etc. That's what's going on in Canada. So they're aligning now with the USA. This is something that the Biden people announced, and the Trump people are going to do the same thing, or the Harris people. It's all going to be the same. We may go to protectionist policies where, like, local companies are like, oh, why are you letting these cheap products come in? And this is it's always a how can I say, a debate, because from the consumer's point of view, would you like access to a cheaper phone or a cheaper car if it's the same quality? It's a simple question, right? There are some products, just for example, here in Korea, we have a new car called the Casper. It's done by Hyundai. I don't think it's going to see the light of day in the USA, at least as of now that I know. I did a review recently on, and China, and Hyundai is a Korean company, so it's not a Chinese company. So I want to make that clear. I'm not Chinese, nor do I live in China right now. But I used to live in China, and this is a different story. But I know people get confused when you talk about this stuff. But the thing is, I'm trying to say, though, is that from just a consumer standpoint, say if you're in the USA, if the American government or the Canadian government, whoever you live, says, okay, you have to buy American cars, you can't buy Toyota, you can't buy Hyundai, is that good or bad for you? And that's just a question, right? And from my point of view, as a consumer, I want access to products from anywhere around the world. This is my point of view, but I understand from on the ground, people are like, oh, why are you buying foreign products, et cetera. But like I said, from the consumer point of view, and also too, this is part of trade, because you can't expect to raise tariffs on, say, products from China and then not have them fight back and say, well, we're going to raise tariffs on your products. So think of it this way: if we want to sell iPhones to the Chinese, right? They're going to probably want to sell their phones to us, right? Or trade, or sell a different product to us, right? Be it clothes or whatever, and through manufacturing. So it's all connected. And I know this stuff gets very, very complicated and messy. And one of the things that's funny is a lot of times people know about international politics through movies, but don't make the connection that this is the real world. And I point out to the movie Dune. If you haven't seen this, it's basically about the Middle East. And when you watch this movie, just ask yourself, which side is the protagonist? And I'll leave it at that. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on any one of these things. I'm particularly interested in what you guys think about this Red Lobster stuff. What does this say about the consumer? And do we see more of these kind of closing of local businesses in the USA? And to be perfectly frank, guys, I just want to make it clear. I do understand that people are losing their jobs, right? We make jokes about the Red Lobster, et cetera, but there are people that work at these places that are losing their jobs, and that has ripple effects throughout the economy. So I do appreciate your time, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next video.